Next speaker is Calum MacKay from North Hearadh Trust. Calum, I'll pass over to you. Can you keep to your...
I'll try. Thanks very much, Donna. There's always a danger, I think, when you have a panel of 4 people representing community groups, and there's going to be a huge degree of duplication across what people say. However, I think even what we've heard already illustrates that while there's a common purpose to what we're all doing, we're all different. All the community groups are different. And I'm here to talk about North Hearadh Trust, which came into existence about 22, 23 years ago. And I'm going to address 3 things. First of all, I'm going to say a wee bit about the background, and then I'll say a wee bit about the acquisition process, how we came to own the land, and thirdly, a wee bit about what we have managed to do so far and what we're currently doing. So the background basically is that North Hearadh, whole land mass of North Hearadh and the offshore islands of Scarp and Scarpe were for a long time, probably about 170 years, traditional kind of sporting Highland estate centred on a large house, Amonsea Castle, comprising in land area about 79,000 acres, and the castle itself was completed in 1868, and for the next, up until 1942, the estate was owned by the one family, the Scots. Sir Edward Scott followed by his son Sir Samuel Scott. But since then, the estate has changed hands many times, quite a number of times really. A few changes took place during that period. In 1975, Scarpe was sold off to a private owner. In 1983, Scarpe was sold off to another private owner. And in 1993, an area of land comprising 7,500 acres on the shore of Loch Seaforth was taken out of the estate and held by the owners as a separate estate. I think the main purpose for this was that they thought there was a possibility. Some of you may remember there was a proposal for a super quarry down in Lingerby in South Hearadh, and that fell through. And I think possibly the owners of North Hearadh thought that there might be an option for something similar on the shores of Loch Seaforth. So they took out this area of land comprising 7,500 acres and they held it separately. Over the years, as I say, the estate was owned by absentee landowners who were hardly ever seen in the island. They had their own representatives on the island. They had a factor, and they had lawyers to whom someone could go, but really the management of the ownership of the estate was largely by absentee landlords who were hardly ever seen. However, the last owner of the estate, before the community bought it, actually lived on the estate. He was a guy called Jonathan Bulmer. He moved to Hearadh. He was the owner or the main man of the well-known Bulmer's cider, and he brought his wife and his young family to live in North Hearadh. But unfortunately, his young wife died at the age of 42. She died of cancer, and Jonathan then decided he didn't want to live in Hearadh anymore. So the estate was placed on the market in April 2002. And that leads me on to my second point, the acquisition of the land. So when the estate was placed on the market, there was a bit of discussion within the community almost immediately about the option of community ownership. And at that time, community ownership of land was fairly topical. The Scottish Land Fund had been set up, and a couple of other community buyouts had actually happened. So the community proceeded to hold discussions, meetings and so on to discuss the option of community ownership. Very early on, they decided that there was a major obstacle which was the large castle. Castle being 70 years old or something at that time, large building, difficult to maintain, the community decided they wouldn't have anything to do with that. So we were advised that if someone else could be found who would buy the castle, the community could make a bid for the land. So we did know a multi-millionaire businessman who already had a wee house in Hearadh. He'd been coming to Hearadh for a long, long time. So we approached him and asked him if he would like a bigger house in Hearadh. And lo and behold, he said yes. So we ended up coming to an arrangement with a guy called Ian Hall, whose name many in the room know very well by now, because he's gone on to acquire other areas of Lewis since then. But anyway, he helped us immensely, I suppose, in North Hearadh, because without him buying the castle, we potentially wouldn't have been able to acquire the land. So a deal was done that he would buy the castle and the fishing rights to the various salmon and trout lochs, and the community would buy the land and various properties on the land. The whole thing was valued at £4.4 million, and the community ended up paying £2.2 million, and Ian Hall ended up paying another £2.2 million for his share of it. The North Hearadh community took a wee while, obviously, in discussions within the community. A lot of people were uncertain as to whether a local community group could actually manage an estate, and eventually most of the community were persuaded that it was possible, and the deal went ahead. I mentioned earlier that Scarpe and Seaforth estate had been removed earlier from the old estate, so one of the first things after the trust was set up that happened was the people living on the Seaforth estate decided that they would like the land to be bought back, so the owners were approached and asked if they would sell the estate. So in due course that did happen. So we ended up buying a second estate, the Seaforth estate, and bringing it back into the North Hearadh Trust. Number of years after that, the owner of Scarpe approached the community and said that he would like to donate Scarpe to the community, which was a very generous offer on his behalf. So the community of Scarpe then had to decide whether to accept the offer and then how to manage Scarpe. So they had the option of either running Scarpe on their own or reuniting with the North Hearadh Trust. And after discussing the options, they decided to reunite with the North Hearadh Trust. By this time, Scarpe was attached to Hearadh by a bridge. So we then have the North Hearadh Trust managing the whole land mass of North Hearadh plus Scarpe, which is attached to Hearadh by a bridge. That's where we are now. And the trust, that takes me to my third point. What has the North Hearadh Trust done and what does it do? The trust is run by a board of 12 directors, elected annually. They are appointed geographically throughout the estate to represent various villages, and we employ a number of staff which varies from year to year, but today we're employing 6 staff doing a variety of different things. The main thing that the trust does is to support the community and the people living on the land. We've got about 200 crofters in 12, 14 townships. And they appreciate very much having the headquarters of the trust right in the middle of the estate, right in Tarbert, and they can approach the staff or the directors any time. We work very closely with the crofters and with common grazings, and many of the common grazing projects that go ahead on common grazing are managed jointly by the trust and by the crofters themselves. We also support local businesses. We've got 3 business units in East Tarbert, and there's a fine dining restaurant in one, there's a brewery in another, and the other is a base for a local, an administrative base for a local business. And over the years, we've also given small grants to local businesses which are starting up. We also work on housing. We've got, at the moment, we've got 4 houses for rent, and we have just signed a deal to build 2 more houses in Hearadh North at a cost of £600,000. That's just for the 2 buildings on a site which is already prepared. So housing is very, very challenging, as you all know. We also help with tourism infrastructure. We built a few years ago, we built a pretty big visitor centre in Hoosianish, which comprises a seating area, showers, toilets, vending machines, and so on. We built an eagle observatory in Meavag, in Glen Meavag, which has a huge number of visitors visiting it every year. We've got a few camper van sites on the estate. We provide car parking here and there all over the place. We've got toilet facilities also in a few places on the estate. We provide a ranger service who does guided walks, talks, working with schools, working with community groups, etc., etc. We operate the local facility, a recycling facility for Urras in Tarbert. And right next door to it, we have a retail outlet, a wee shop, which is like a mini Lewis Crofters selling crofting requirements. In the winter, we sell a lot of animal feed. And all year round, we sell a lot of bird feed and fence posts and you name it, the kind of things that you normally get in the crofters, but on a smaller scale. We manage the herd of deer in North Urras. We've got approximately 200 red deer. We lease some of the sporting the deer shooting out to local estates, but also we have a local deer stalking group, which is local people who can join, and we've got various renewables. We've got a hydro scheme in Bunnamanetta North. We've got a few wind turbines all over the place. So these are some of the things we do. The main thing is to work with the local community, let them know what we're doing. Over the last 2 weeks, we've had 4 community consultation meetings in 4 different locations, one in Hoosianish, one in Scarledale, one in Scarpe and one in Tarbert. And they've all been very well attended. We get the views of the local community, we engage with them. But the door of the North Urras Trust office is always open. It's a stream of people coming through all the time. This was all done on behalf of the community to try and help the community, try and make some improvement in the community. We've not managed to do anything major, but we try and do small things which hopefully will make a wee bit of a difference.